Welcome to Devotional Drops, where we explore the richness of Scripture and how it speaks to our lives today. In this episode, we're reflecting on 2 Corinthians 2. The average person spends 47 minutes per day in conflict with others, at work, at home, in traffic. But what if the ancient wisdom about peacemaking could transform how we handle modern disputes?
That's fascinating. And it connects directly to this powerful concept I was reading about in Corinthians about the ministry of reconciliation. What does that really mean in today's world?
Well, here's what's interesting. It's not just about avoiding conflict. The original Greek word for reconciliation actually implies an active process of restoration, like rebuilding a broken bridge.
So it's more about transformation than just keeping the peace?
Exactly. And you know what's remarkable? Studies show that companies with strong conflict resolution practices see a 50% reduction in workplace disputes. But here's the key. It's not about suppressing disagreements, it's about transforming how we handle them,
That reminds me of something from the text about how peace has to start with internal work first.
right? And this is where it gets really practical. Let me share something that happened at my workplace last month. Two departments were completely at odds over a project timeline. The tension was affecting everyone.
Hmm. How did that situation play out?
Well, instead of letting it escalate, we tried something different. We brought in a mediator who first had everyone identify their shared goals. You know what happened? Within an hour, people who wouldn't even look at each other were actually collaborating.
That's such a powerful example of these principles in action. What do you think made the difference?
Three things really stood out. First, creating a safe space for honest dialogue. Second, focusing on interests rather than positions, like in the biblical example of seeking understanding before judgment. And third, this is crucial, maintaining everyone's dignity throughout the process.
You know, that connects directly to what the text says about speaking truth in love.
Exactly, and here's where modern research backs this up. A recent study showed that conflicts resolved through mediation had an 87% satisfaction rate compared to just 43% for traditional confrontational approaches.
Those numbers really drive home the impact of this approach.
And what's fascinating is how this applies beyond just individual conflicts. Think about major social issues, racial reconciliation, political divisions, family disputes. The principles remain the same, just on a larger scale.
Speaking of scale, how do you think these concepts translate to global conflicts?
Well, look at successful peace processes throughout history. The ones that lasted always included three elements we've been discussing: genuine dialogue, addressing root causes, and working toward mutual benefit. The Good Friday Agreement in Northern Ireland is a perfect example.
That's such an important historical perspective to consider.
And here's something else to consider. Neuroscience now shows that when we approach conflict with empathy and openness, it actually changes our brain chemistry. We literally process information differently,
That's incredible. It's like science confirming ancient wisdom.
right? And it gets better. Studies show that organizations that implement these principles see a 25% increase in productivity and a 50% decrease in turnover. The impact goes way beyond just resolving conflicts.
So, what would you say to someone facing a seemingly impossible conflict right now?
Well, first understand that peace isn't just the absence of conflict. It's the presence of justice and understanding. Start small, listen deeply, and remember what the text teaches us. Reconciliation is both a gift and a responsibility.
That's such a hopeful perspective on what can feel like an overwhelming challenge.
And you know what's encouraging? Every major movement toward peace started with individual choices. Someone deciding to listen instead of argue, to understand instead of accuse, to build bridges instead of walls. Until next time on Devotional Drops, remember, peacemaking isn't just about ending conflicts, it's about transforming relationships.